So welcome. I'm Rachel Maruzars, Dr. Rachel Maruzars. I am a graduate of Wright Graduate University for the Realization of Human Potential, and I'm a member of adjunct faculty here. I'm also Director of Corporate and Foundation Relations for Sinai Health System, which is a safety net healthcare provider on the west and southwest sides of Chicago. And that is my day job. That is what keeps me moving and inspired. It's both working with colleagues in the community, with community members, to be of the greatest service that we can for the community, and then coming here and working alongside individuals to develop myself as a professional, develop myself as an increasingly well-nourished, sustained, resilient woman, and supporting others to develop themselves. So I'm just honored to have you here with me today. I'm sure we'll have more people roll in as we come along, but I do want to get started. So today we're going to talk about the power of personal responsibility, and we're going to introduce you to some tools, whether you work in the nonprofit sector or whether you relate to the topic personally for various reasons. Tools to look at how to take greater responsibility for your self-care, how to take greater responsibility for your personal development, and ultimately, whether you work in nonprofits or in other areas, how to bring more of your influence and more of your service into the world. Here at Wright Graduate University for the Realization of Human Potential, we really believe that the more we develop ourselves as leaders and individuals who are contributing to ourselves and investing in ourselves in our own capacity, that's going to contribute to us making greater contributions to our organizations, whether it's contributions through the people that we serve as clients, as donors, whether it be to the people we supervise, whether it be to our bosses, our board members, and in the broader community. So WGU, as I'm going to call it, is an accredited master's and doctoral degree granting university that specializes in transformational leadership and coaching. So we bring together a wide range of theories and methodologies, from educational theory, developmental psychology, Adlerian psychology, existential philosophy and psychology, humanistic psychology, and even neuroscience and other related research, to look at how can we really help individuals tap their potential, and how can we support leaders to develop themselves from the inside out. So whereas a lot of other leadership programs, including where I got my MBA, which I'm very proud of, look at leadership from how do I influence other people, here at WGU, we look at how do I first grow and develop myself. And when we say leader, we don't mean just people who have a C-suite title or people who are managers or supervisors. We believe that every member of our community is a leader. We're all leading towards something. And how can we make the greatest impact possible? And that's why I love WGU. That's why I was attracted to the work of Wright Graduate University and its parent organization, the Wright Foundation for the Realization of Human Potential, when I first was introduced to it about 10 years ago. So that's a little bit about me, a little bit about Wright Graduate University, but ultimately this training is about you. And whether you're here with us in the room, whether you're on the webcast, whether you're sitting in the back of the room, I love everybody being there as well. This training is about you, because again, we're looking at how we can be of the greatest influence and service by investing in ourselves and taking responsibility for ourselves and our own nourishment and impact, so we can be gifts and blessings wherever we go. So, how many people here work in the nonprofit sector? And if you're on the Zoom, you can also put it on the Zoom. We have a little chat box, and they'll make sure that I know what your answers are. So how many people work for nonprofits? How many people work for organizations that support nonprofits? I know we have at least one in the room. How many people work for healthcare organizations? That's me. Human services? And if you're answering on Zoom, we'll make sure we grab that in a little bit too. How about education? All right, everybody who works for Wright Graduate University had better own that piece. How about organizations that help invest in capacity building for nonprofit organizations? Because I know that's true of some of the people that we have in the room. And how many work for advocacy? I used to work for advocacy. We've got education on the webinar. So education is a very significant portion of the sector. And how many here have people that you care about or missions that you care about in the world and you want to be of greater influence and greater impact? I know that's all of us. I've got to imagine, even if you're not sure exactly what that mission is, that all of us have someone that we are serving or supporting or somebody that we simply care about. And so one of the things we're going to talk about is how this topic will help us be of greater service. So I'm going to invite you to create the most value for yourself out of this talk possible. A few ways you can do that. First, have a beginner's mind. So you may be familiar with some of the topics I talk about. They may sound similar to other fields, which actually is deliberate. We seek to integrate different perspectives and give credit to different schools that inform our work here. But have a beginner's mind because it's going to help you learn more and it's going to help you benefit more. Focus on your own experience. So sometimes as professionals, when we come to these seminars, we go, oh man, responsibility, that would be great for my employee. That one employee really needs this topic. Or, boy, that would be great for my board of directors. Or, oh, that would be great for my brother. He really needs this. But I'm going to ask us, even if that's all potentially true, today focus on how do you personally relate to these topics? Where do you see yourself? And if something's relevant for you, notice that. And if something's not relevant for you, that's fine. Hopefully something later in the talk will be relevant for you. And then one other kind of top tip, pick at least one issue or challenge in your life on which you'd like to focus. So if there's something that's really been a challenge for you at work or an opportunity that you don't really know how to take advantage of, something that's meaningful for you could be a relationship with a coworker or a client. It could be a conversation you don't know how to have or somewhere where you felt stuck. And I'm going to give you just a minute to write that down or at least think about it if you don't happen to have paper. So today we will explore what responsibility means. We're going to look at lots of different definitions of responsibility. We're going to look at barriers to responsibility and ways that we, as human beings, get stuck and may get caught in irresponsible patterns. I'm going to introduce you to two tools that will help you become more aware of where you may get stuck in irresponsibility and tools that will help you make more satisfying choices that will contribute to your own development and nourishment, as well as your capacity to support others. And then by the end of this talk, we will invite you to choose at least 2 action steps that you can take this week to help take greater responsibility for your satisfaction, your self-care, your impact. I want this to be applicable, meaningful. We're going to talk a little bit about philosophy at the beginning, but then we're going to get really concrete. So, what do we mean by personal responsibility? So, if we could actually have a couple shares in the room from anybody who's willing to share, or type into Zoom, what do you think we mean by personal responsibility? And if you'd like to share in the room, we actually have Sophia who's coming up and can give you the microphone if you're willing to share. Yeah, Marlon.
For me, personal responsibility is being accountable for the things that you said you were going to do and going through with them fully.
Awesome. Accountability and following through. Thank you. Also, when we share, I'm going to ask us to clap. It gives us a good opportunity to have a bit of a state change and also kind of keeps us in our bodies a little bit. Any others, either from the Zoom chat or others in the room? Definitions of responsibility. Deliver what you promise. So very similar to what Marlon said. So I'm hearing a lot of keeping your word. Thank you. All right, I'm going to share a couple from the dictionary. So Merriam-Webster gives a number of different definitions. Accountability, being the cause of a situation. It can be used to mean a positional responsibility. So being a boss, I'm responsible for my team, or I'm responsible for hitting my fundraising goal for the year. As a fundraiser, you'll hear me talk a lot about hitting fundraising goals. Much of the literature on responsibility talks about accountability or compliance. So again, keeping your word, assigning ownership, monitoring outcomes, or adhering to standards. So what's the standard to which I'm responsible? A number of scholars talk about in terms of morals or ethics, doing the right thing. And recently, a lot of the literature talks about responsibility in terms of social responsibility, so being responsible for the community. So that's great, but I want to broaden our definition of responsibility today and use a definition that we use here at Wright Graduate University that looks at our role in terms of being responsible for our lives more broadly, and specifically pulls from existential theory. And don't worry, we're not going to dive too deeply in philosophy, but stay with me because this is going to be really important, and I personally think really exciting. So the definition that we use for responsibility here at Wright Graduate University is that it's the principle by which we author our lives through our moment-by-moment choices, whether we're aware of them or not, whether we're conscious of them or not. So I'm going to say that once more. We talk about responsibility as being the principle whereby we author our lives, we create our lives through our choices moment by moment. So on one hand, it's kind of exciting to go, wow, I'm creating the next moment of my life through my choices. And I actually have a choice about my experience, about what I feel, about what I do. That's wonderful. And on the other hand, it's like, wait, I didn't choose everything that I was born into. I can't control everything around me. I can't control all of the systems. I can't necessarily control all of the environments. I can't necessarily control the family I was born into. So if there's so much that I can't control, how is it that I'm authoring my life? So the existentialists actually had something to say about that. So for Jean-Paul Sartre, who was one of my favorite thinkers on responsibility, he said that responsibility doesn't mean that I've chosen everything about me. It doesn't mean that I chose to be born Rachel Maruzars in the Maruzars family in the southwest suburbs of Chicago with the particular family I had and the particular DNA that I had. It means that regardless of what circumstances have been in the past, including whatever choices I may have made in the past, I'm responsible for how I choose to respond right now in the moment. And I don't necessarily know what the outcome of that choice is going to be. So I don't necessarily know what outcome of today's talk will be for myself personally. I'm kind of excited about that. But it's my choice to step up on the stage and give this talk. It's my choice to share and connect with the people in the room and the people on the webcast. And I won't know what I can create and the extent of my responsibility until I engage in that, until I make that choice. There may be other choices I'm not even aware that I'm making. There may be a look on my face I'm not present to. There may be a feeling that I'm not quite aware of in the moment. But I still have a choice. And Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, an existential psychologist who wrote poignantly about his own experience in concentration camps, and particularly Auschwitz in Germany, as well as other concentration camps, spoke about how the individuals who couldn't control their circumstances around him in the concentration camp, who did not have choices about necessarily what the outcome would be, those who chose their attitude and those who chose how they were going to experience those moments. And those who chose to live with a sense of purpose, even if they didn't know what the outcome was, they were actually more likely to survive. Didn't necessarily mean they all would, but there was a significant increase in one's likelihood to survive as a result of making that choice. I think it's incredibly profound. One other thing I want to say about responsibility, it's not about going, I made all these choices in the past and they were terrible, so I'm just going to feel bad about it and beat myself up about it. Responsibility in this sense is not about beating myself up for past decisions. It's inherently forward-looking. So given whatever I've created up to this point, I have a choice. So I'm going to give you just 30 seconds to write down one or two things, like what are you taking from this for yourself? And then we're going to start to talk about your experience. We're going to talk about how this is meaningful for each of you as professionals and as people living big, rich lives. So I'll give you 30 seconds. Thank you. So we'll come on back. So this sounds exciting. Sometimes it can sound a little threatening. But this is really an invitation to look at how am I responsible for my life? What choices can I make just in this moment to experience this talk in a way that's satisfying? Or when I go back to my office in a way that's satisfying. So it's a tremendous invitation. So if this sounds so exciting, why don't we do this all the time? Why do I not focus on that choice? There's a very interesting dynamic that happens in human relations called the drama triangle. Has anybody in the room seen this, or anybody on the Zoom? So a handful of people, certainly people who work for Wright Graduate University. So the drama triangle has three positions. This comes from transactional analysis and the work of Stephen Karpman. And you see there's a victim, a rescuer, and a persecutor. Now, in any good soap opera, you have these three roles. You have the victim, the person who's being cheated on, the person who's put upon, the person who has the diagnosis. All very legitimate, concerning situations, but we kind of get drawn into that person's position as being the person who's put upon. There's the persecutor, which could be the spouse who's cheating on them, or it could be the cancer. It could be, again, the hurricane. It could be, again, legitimate challenges, but we still kind of get sucked into, okay, here's this person who's put upon, and here's this person who's doing it to them, or this thing that's doing it to them. Now, if it were just that, it wouldn't be that interesting of a soap opera. There wouldn't be much that really happens. It would be kind of a downer. So we need one more person or one more position in the drama triangle, and that is the rescuer. And that is Prince Charming or Princess Charming or gender-neutral Charming, who swoops in and says, I will save you from your failing marriage or your pain, or I will give you my kidney, my spleen. I will take care of you. This is what makes it feel dynamic and exciting, and it feels so rich and good, right? But there's a bit of a challenge. When we get caught in these positions, the person who's holding the victim role doesn't necessarily take charge of their own kind of growth, development, movement. They don't necessarily step up for solution. Often they're looking for a rescuer. Similarly, the rescuer is looking for a victim. The rescuer in human relations often is a person who steps in, I'm going to help you. I'll take care of that grant proposal. Don't worry, I've got it covered. Here, let me help you because I know that you can't handle it. There's nothing wrong with helping. There's nothing wrong with supporting. But often what the rescuer is doing is denying their own needs, denying their own motivations. And we'll go into exactly how the rescuer does that. And then the persecutor is often blaming the victim. So when we got caught in the drama triangle, nobody's looking at what can we create that's different. We tend to just get caught in that drama triangle trap. Similarly, nobody in the drama triangle is taking full responsibility. The victim is denying that they have a choice. And I'm not talking about victims, people who may have experienced significant trauma, significant violence. I'm not talking about victim in that sense. I'm talking about when we hold ourselves as victims and think we don't have a choice. The rescuer is denying their responsibility because, well, they're taking responsibility from another person, and often what we see in human relations is when I step in to try to take over the meeting at work, which I did earlier this week, apologies to my colleagues, I wasn't present to the fact that I was feeling anxious, I was feeling nervous, and I wasn't willing to let go of some of the control that I was used to holding in these meetings. I was playing the rescuer role, but I wasn't taking responsibility for my feelings and what was really going on with me. And the persecutor, as I said, is blaming. Now, nobody who gets into the drama triangle stays in one of these roles either. What happens in the drama triangle is that we end up switching roles. This is where it gets pernicious. So I may stay late at work that night because I saved my team from that problem. And if I'm not doing it from a place where I'm taking care of myself emotionally and tending to myself and really present to what's really going on with me, and if I'm doing it just to save and feel validated only by saving another person, inevitably I'll end up feeling like a victim. I may not say it. I may not say, oh, work was so hard today and I'm so put upon. But even if I don't say it, it'll come up internally. I may rush right to the hospital cafeteria for a donut. Hate to say, I sometimes do that. I may feel sorry for myself and put on, and I may not speak up next time to say, wait, how can we make things different? I may just feel sorry for myself. And it's amazing how quickly we can go from rescuer to victim or even to persecutor. I can't believe they cut our budget. I can't believe the political environment right now. I can't work in this. You can hear the persecutor and the victim. I can't work in this. Look what's being done to me. This is terrible. There's nothing wrong with speaking truth and expressing upset or anger or wanting things to be different, but when we're stuck in the drama triangle, we're not looking at directional thinking. We're not looking at what can we create that's different. What choices do I have? We get stuck in these patterns. So I'm going to ask you to take a couple minutes, not a couple minutes, actually much shorter than that, to write down one or two ways that you identify with at least one or two positions on this drama triangle. And actually, I'm going to have those of you in the room pair up to share, and we're just going to give each person 20 seconds to share. In the Zoom, you can also share that if you want to say, hey, I relate to this way. It sometimes is helpful to see that. So pick a buddy next to you. And then 20 seconds. So the first person can talk, and if it's a coworker, if it's someone you know well, you can speak in very general terms. Totally your choice, but 20 seconds just to talk about how you relate to this. So who here can identify at least one time that they have played the victim role? Again, the victim role. All hands in the room. Okay. Who here might identify with the rescuer role? Who here might have once or twice played the persecutor role? I saw a very fast hand in the back. So here's why this is so important to me for nonprofit professionals, and this is actually why I chose to do my dissertation research on this topic and on curriculum around this topic. So in the nonprofit sector, and I found this in countless conversations with colleagues, it's so easy for us to fall into that rescuer role. And sometimes it's easiest for us to build organizations around the rescuer role. What we've found is that contributes to people getting stuck in this drama triangle position. And it contributes to drama triangle patterns happening in meetings at work, in drama triangle patterns happening where I save people and go home, but rather than tending to myself and my needs, just feel drained and go to victim or persecutor. And if we're not conscious of this pattern, then we won't be taking full responsibility for being the greatest, most creative professionals and organizations that we can be serving the community and our missions. This is a mission-centric topic. Because if we look at the ways that historically we might have gotten caught up in these rescuer patterns, which are comfortable for a lot of us working in service organizations or for mission-based organizations, if we're not conscious of that, then we're not going to make sure that we're tending to our needs and taking care of ourselves the ways that we need so we can ultimately be greater blessings to the world and contribute more fully and be directional. And that's what I really want to see for the nonprofit sector. So now that we've set up the drama triangle, okay, so now I know that I go to the drama triangle. I might even catch it in the moment once or twice. So what do I do about that? The reason we go to these drama triangle patterns, the reason I may play the victim or go to the rescuer role or go to blame somebody else is because underneath there may be emotions that I don't know how to be with or don't want to be with. It could be fear, anxiety, anger, a legitimate desire to see things different that I'm afraid to speak up about. And there are needs that I have that I'm trying to meet. So I may be playing the victim because I'm looking for someone to take care of me because I'm afraid to speak up and say, hey, this is what I want. Or I may go to the rescuer because I'm looking to matter. There's such compelling research about how we're motivated by this. And one of the top, the definition for burnout actually is really built around people who are serving others and not replenishing their emotional resources and tending to themselves. So this is tied to the definition of burnout. So I said I was going to give you 2 tools. This is the first tool. This is a tool that you can pay attention to during your day. So when do I get caught in the drama triangle and where do I see this come up? Because then that's an invitation to stop. So what's next? What do I do then? So we're going to give you just an introduction to this, but we have a wonderful tool here. We're going to consider this the roadmap for the rest of our time together, called the Right Developmental Model. It's an awful lot on the screen, but what this is this is a model that was developed by Dr. Bob Wright, who's one of the founders of our university, that helps show us not only how the individual develops in relation to developing a sense of self, developing a relationship with their emotions, developing the capacity to meet their needs over the course of a lifetime. This also is actually a tool that we can use to identify what needs do I have in the moment that I may be avoiding when I go to the rescuer position or when I go to the victim position. And stay with me. I promise this is going to start to make a little bit more sense very, very soon. So, has anybody in the room seen developmental models in psychology before? A handful of people. So, when we're early, we start with our relationship with our aliveness. When we're infants, we develop our sense of I'm alive, I'm secure, I'm okay. My relationship with whether my needs are going to be tended to, whether I'm going to be fed, whether my diaper will be changed. Very, very early basic needs. And we develop our relationship with our sense of security, our sense of trust, our relationship to fear, the fear, am I going to be okay, at that very early age. But it doesn't just stop there. Depending on how well I developed my relationship with my aliveness, with my sense of trust, with the sense that my survival needs will be met, that actually informs how I respond to fear and how I respond to uncertain situations over the course of my lifetime. And this is an opportunity as we're looking at this to say, okay, when I go to that rescuer position, when I stepped into that meeting to try to take care of it, when I was trying to take charge of that meeting with my colleagues, in that moment I was feeling fear. And underneath that was a deep desire to be secure, a deep desire to know that things would be okay, that our team would be okay. And I immediately went to that rescuer position because I wasn't aware that I was feeling fear. And when I'm feeling fear or anxiety, if fear doesn't work for you, the word anxiety might work, or uncertainty, we have choices about how to respond to those feelings in ways where we can then take responsibility either for tending to myself. So I may want to soothe myself. I want to simply name my fear to myself, like, oh, I'm feeling anxious. Oh, this is an uncertain situation. Oh, look, I'm trying to rescue. Something might be going on with me. And this is an invitation. If you relate to this, and if you see moments when you go to be a rescuer or go to some other drama position to say, wait, could I be feeling anxiety in this moment? Is there some choice I can make that's not caught in that drama triangle, but actually is going to give me an invitation to do something different? So in that meeting, I noticed I was clamping down. I noticed I was taking control, speaking over people. And when I went, I feel afraid, I stepped back and I reminded myself of my higher purpose in that meeting, which was to develop my colleagues who were actually running the meeting and for our team to grow and develop. And it was actually most important for me to just be aware of my fear, soothe myself, tend to myself, and hold that the higher purpose was actually for me to develop the team. And speaking up and trying to rescue wasn't going to meet that need. It was actually more responsible for me not to speak up in that moment. And that was the choice that was available for me. So that's our relationship with what we call the first level of the right developmental model, fear. We're going to continue to go through these levels, and if you relate to some of them, great. If you don't relate to some of them, wait to see what does resonate for you. Again, look at what's really meaningful for you, and in what ways do you go to the drama triangle when actually there could be other choices available for you. So as we grow and develop as toddlers and very young children, we move on to what we call level 2 of the model, which is our relationship to hunger and affirmation. And we don't mean physical hunger, we mean emotional hunger, the hunger to connect. The hunger that I have as I'm talking with all of you and looking into the video camera and going, oh man, I know there are 18 attendees on there. Hi, I see you. I want you to see me. I love that you're on. And depending on how well we learned how to meet that need as a child, that informs our relationship with affirmation, both our ability to affirm ourselves and our ability to take in affirmation from others. And it also relates to our relationship with the feeling of hurt. So in that meeting, I mentioned that I was feeling fear and trying to clamp down and control things. I also was very hungry emotionally, hungry to be seen, hungry to be validated. My role in the past has been to run the meetings. I love running meetings. I love having the table. But again, my purpose and what I was there to create was a team that was empowered and a team that was able to run, frankly, without me. And in that moment, when I started to notice both my fear and then my hunger to be acknowledged, to be affirmed, it wasn't appropriate for me, and it actually wasn't responsible for me to try to step in and rescue and do things for other people, because underneath it, I was actually also really wanting to be affirmed. I was wanting to be acknowledged. I was wanting to be seen. And I believe a lot of people go into the nonprofit sector and service positions, and I guess I'll speak mostly for myself, but I've heard other people say this too, out of a desire to matter and know that I've contributed and that my life matters. And that's beautiful and that's important, and we need that. But if I'm not also taking responsibility to affirm myself, for instance, in the moments when I have a conversation with a coworker and I feel hurt, I may not say, I feel hurt. But after the meeting, I might go into my office or make eye contact with somebody or call up a friend after work and say, hey, I felt hurt. Tend to myself, acknowledge myself, affirm myself. And this is really important for responsibility, because often we go to the rescuer position because we want to matter, Or we go to the victim position of, oh, my work is so hard, I just can't handle it, I don't know what to do, because we want somebody to acknowledge us, acknowledge how we're feeling, rescue us. And the more that I'm aware that I have those hungers and taking responsibility, making choices to meet those hungers, and it could be as simple as making eye contact with you right now. Or it could be as simple as saying, hey, a lot of people are looking at me and listening to me. That's great. I must matter. Then that actually helps me get out of the drama triangle and helps me be more present with you and actually, hopefully, serve better and to a greater extent. So, as we develop our relationship with our emotions as infants and toddlers, we eventually move to what we call the terrible twos. We move to the toddlerhood where we start to say no, or at least we develop our relationship with the word no. I heard a statistic saying that 2-year-olds hear the word no at least once every 7 minutes, and that's probably on the low end. But this is where, depending on how well our families responded to us, we learned that we could say no and set boundaries. Or sometimes we learned we could say no and people would leave us alone, and then that was a way we kind of rescued ourselves. I can talk about that in another talk. And it's by learning how to say no, this was also the age at which we learned whether or not it was okay for us to assert our will, for us to say, this is what I want, this was what matters to me, this is what I care about, this is what we should create. And it's really important for us at that early age to develop the capacity to say no and then to assert what I want and to know that people will hear us and listen to us. And sometimes they may push back, and actually that's very developmentally healthy too, to have people push back and not always say yes to us. But to the extent I know that I can say no and set boundaries for myself or set boundaries for the team, like, no, this is not okay what we're doing as an organization. Here's how I think we can be better. Here's what I need. Here's the support that I need. Here's what matters to me, and here's what matters for our purpose. And this is related to our relationship with anger. And anger is an incredibly charged emotion. But what's important to know about our relationship with anger when it comes to responsibility is that anger is the emotion that takes us, even if it's just a low-level irritation or upset. Anger is the emotion, where if we pay attention to it, that takes us from what we don't want or what isn't working to the opportunity to create what we do want. And if I'm aware of moments when I'm angry or when I'm saying no or want to say no or saying a silent no, it's important for me to notice, am I in the drama triangle right now? Am I playing the persecutor and blaming other people? Am I saying no and kind of holding myself as a victim? Or am I saying, no, here's what I want to create? Again, responsibility in the definition we're using is incredibly directional. So if there's something that you see that can be better, or if there's support that you need, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're always going to get it. But one way to take responsibility for your experience and for your self-care and for the impact that you make on your organization and others is by noticing when I feel anger or upset, going, wait, what is going on for me? And is there something that I want that's different? And again, if you're in the drama triangle, notice when you're in the drama triangle. These are skills that can take years of development, and that's fine, but we're working on noticing today. I'm going to go pretty quickly through these last ones because I want to be sensitive to time. The first 3 levels were some of the most foundational. Level 4, this is when we start to develop our relationship to groups. This is when we develop the skills to conform to groups, to belong to groups, even groups where I may not necessarily look like everyone or come from the same background, but my skills to create my sense of belonging. And then, once I know I can create my sense of belonging, to speak the truth, to express myself. And it can be very easy at this level to either hold myself as a victim, oh, this group isn't going to listen to me, or to go to the persecutor position and go, here's what I think you're doing wrong, here's what I think you're doing wrong, and to express what we think is truth, but actually is reactivity. Now, taking responsibility at this level is noticing where I may be holding myself as a victim to the group and instead say, wait, it's my job to create my belonging, and it's my job to speak up, and it's my job to express what's true. Truth is an incredibly powerful tool for personal responsibility. So if that's something that you relate to, that's a potentially powerful action step to think about. Is there a truth that you're withholding that is important to say? Or even just to acknowledge for yourself, even if it's not appropriate to say in the office? Is there a truth that would be where it would be taking responsibility to acknowledge it for yourself and then see if there's something you want different? The more we develop our capacity to be with our feelings, to notice when we're in the drama triangle and to take responsibility for our experience, that's when we can truly start to strive. That's when we can really bring more of ourselves to our work. And everybody's here in this room and on the webcast has developed striving and the capacity to go for goals at various levels. You wouldn't be on this webcast if you didn't have a degree of striving. And one of the things that's really important is noticing, am I striving? Am I doing what I think is striving, just working hard out of a desire to meet my hungers? Am I doing this out of a sense of fear? And ultimately, when going just for the goal no longer matters, is there a greater purpose that I'm working toward? Now, in the nonprofit sector, and I could do a whole separate talk on this, we often claim a mission statement, and there you go, that's my purpose. But the purpose I'm talking about here is, am I living increasingly on purpose in the moment-by-moment choices that I make? Am I working to develop myself? Am I working to tend to myself so that I can bring more of myself to the nonprofit sector, more of myself to organizations, and more of myself to other people? And it's through developing ourselves and developing our capacity to take responsibility that ultimately we can start to move towards superiority, where we are increasingly excelling and embracing where we excel, but also ultimately authority, recognizing that no matter how great I'm doing, there's always an opportunity for me to grow. There's always something I can do better, and being honest about the difference between that, where I am, and where I see myself going. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to be with us today. Since we're at time, I'm going to invite you to write down one takeaway, and then one step you'd like to take responsibility for your life. And it could be very simple today, and one action that you can take this week, and even put it down in your smartphone as a reminder. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be with you. If you'd like to email me, you have my contact info. Bye.